Hello and welcome to Biochemistry lessons. Today we are going to talk about another kind of organic molecule. We are going to be talking about lipids that makes the fats. So the first lipid molecule that I'm going to be showing you, it's not a lipid actually. It's part of lipids. It's going to be making the triglycerides, but it's not a lipid. It's a glycerol. So actually it is going to be part of fat molecules, but it is a sugar alcohol. If you see it, actually, you're going to probably remember it looks like a carbohydrate. So 3 carbons. First thing, very, very small, only 3 pieces. So 3 carbons over there. And OHs, hydrogen over there, no, 3 OHs. And you complete everything else with hydrogen. It looks like carbon, carbo here, carbohydrate. It is kind of carbohydrate, that's why it's a sugar, but it's a sugar alcohol because it has OHs. The formula for that is something like this. No, 3 carbons, 3 hydroxyls, 3 OHs, completed with hydrogen. This is the glycerol, very important molecule to make fats. And then a fat. Okay, this is a fatty acid because it's an acid and it's fatty. The first part of a fatty acid is this structure, which is a C carbon, double O, OH, C double OH. This makes a carboxylic acid. It's an important part of fatty acids and also amino acids. So every fatty acid starts with a C double OH. It has that stuff over there. And then it has a sequence, usually of at least 8 carbons going on and on and on. Here I put only 5, 6 actually, because of space, but you have no carbons going on and on and on, and you complete those carbons with hydrogen, 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 like that. This here is a fatty acid. The carboxylic acid part is acidic, but the rest is pretty neutral, pretty apolar, and stuff like that. And another way of drawing this is to say there C double O OH, this is the carboxylic acid, followed by a certain number of CH2, CH2N, and complete with a CH3, because you have a C double OH, a certain number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 CH2s, and completing with a CH3. So that's another way of visualizing a fatty acid. Okay? Lipids can also be condensated. So here you have a glycerol. It's a little bit spread because it's easier for us to play with when we have talking bidimensionally. And you have a fatty acid, another fatty acid, another fatty acid. So here you have 1 glycerol, 3 fatty acids. And we are going to be doing the condensation. So when you do the condensation, you're going to be making triglycerides. How is that? It's the same way as we did with carbohydrates. We take out the hydroxy of one, we take out the hydrogen of the other one, and we make the bonds with an oxygen in between them. You have that. Oh, I forgot one piece of hydrogen over there. If I forget a hydrogen, it gets all crazy. So here we have a condensation. I just made a condensation of 1 fatty acid with the glycerol. And now I'm going to be making the condensation of the other 2 just for you to see. I take out water over there. I take out 1 hydrogen over here. And there it is. It's out. And we get the fatty acid. And, I almost forgot that again. And I have here another 1 condensate over there. And finally, I have the last water being made there on the corner with the condensation of the last fatty acid. And almost there. Ooh, here it is. And glycerol, 3 fatty acids, and you have a condensation making a 3 glyceride. It's a glycerol with 3 fatty acids. Visualizing it here in this diagram, we have there glycerol condensating 3 fatty acids, making 3 waters, finishing up making a triglycerides. And here we have a triglyceride formed with glycerol on the left and 3 fatty acids on the right. Okay? Here are three-dimensional view of a triglyceride, glycerol on the bottom and 3 fatty acids going away from it. You're probably asking yourself if there are different types of fatty acids, because I said you have at least 8 carbons, and in the previous image you saw that some of the fatty acids were slightly different. So here I'm going to be showing you this is a fatty acid. You have carboxylic acid followed by C with 2 hydrogens, CH2, a certain number of times. We finish with a CH3. This is what you call a saturated fatty acid. Why is it saturated? Because every carbon contains all the hydrogens that are possible. Every carbon in the middle contains 2 hydrogen, and the carbon in the end contains 3 hydrogens. So this is a saturated fatty acid. So what is that can happen for it not to be saturated? What can happen is something like this. Instead of having complete hydrogens in there, in this example we have 2 carbons connecting to each other by a double bond. If they are connected by a double bond, they are not connecting to 1 hydrogen each. So in this case, we're going to say that this is unsaturated because it's not containing 2 hydrogens that could be placed over there that if we didn't have a double bond between the carbons. So there we have 2 hydrogens missing. So you have a double carbon bond, and it makes the fatty acid to get crooked. The fatty acid bends where you have an unsaturation. So here a small list of a few fatty acids that you have in nature. Arachidic, stearic, palmitic. Those are all saturated fatty acids with different length. Erucic, oleic, they are unsaturated, but they have only 1 crook. They bend in one place, so they are mono-unsaturated fatty acids. And arachidonic, linoleic, and linolenic, they are polyunsaturated fatty acids because you have more than 1 crook, make them bend more than 1 time. So you have there saturated on the left, the mono-unsaturated on the top, and in the bottom you have the polyunsaturated. And the question is, so what? So what that triglycerides made by saturated or unsaturated fat, they are going to have different densities. They may compact more or compact less. And if they compact more or they compact less, they have different densities, they are going to be moving in different ways. They are going to be solid or liquid in different ways in the same temperature. For example, the one that have in the top that have only palmitic acids, a saturated triglycerides, this is probably solid at room temperature. This is butter or saturated vegetable fat, margarine, something like that. In the bottom we have unsaturated triglycerides. They have linolenic polyunsaturated fatty acids. So that one in the bottom is probably liquid at room temperature. The difference between them is going to be the melting point, how solid or how liquid they are at the same temperature. Okay, so we are going to be represented like this. The one in the top, many saturated fatty acids, and the one in the bottom, many unsaturated fatty acids. As I told you, butter, many saturated fatty acids in the triglycerides, making them to be much more solid, while oils like olive oil or palm oil or whatever, they have many more unsaturated fatty acids, so they are more spaced around each other. So what's the difference between them, and why people sometimes are afraid of saturated fatty acid? Why people don't like eating butter, but they like eating olive oil? The point is that some of the fat that make us sick, they are kind of related to saturated fatty acids because they're more solid. So in our body is at 37 degrees Celsius. So people think, okay, if there's a fat that's more likely to become solid inside of our body, that fat is going to be more unhealthy because solid fat in our blood vessels may cause clotting and other kind of problems. So people started getting unease with saturated fatty acids because they would be more prone to be causing arteriosclerosis and other problems. While unsaturated fatty acids, they are more liquid, so they are more unlikely to become solid at the same temperature. So people like more the unsaturated, like less saturated. However, the food industry, they love the saturated because saturated have a better texture. It's easier to cook, it's easier to make stuff. So you know, if you make food, it's easier to bake, for example, make bread or croissant with saturated fatty acids like butter than it is to make with oil. But we are going to have our class to discuss these issues later. Another issue related to saturated and unsaturated is that when the health industry bans or tried to ban the saturated fatty acids because they were kind of unhealthy, the food industry had to adapt itself because people avoided buying saturated fatty acids. So what did they do? They started cooking with unsaturated fatty acids, but they wanted solid unsaturated fatty acids. So they had a trick for that, which is the cis and the trans fat. Cis and trans, both of them are unsaturated, as you can see here. But the cis on the left, as you can see, it's very much crooked. It's a typical unsaturated fatty acid. But the food industry realized that depending on the treatment you do to the unsaturated fats, you may change the position for them to be trans each other, for them to be to the other side of each other, not on the same sides. And if they are trans to each other, this fatty acid don't crook so much. So this is an unsaturated fatty acid that behaves itself like a saturated fatty acid. So this is supposed to be more healthy because it's unsaturated, but it's actually pretty much straight, so it behaves as it is a saturated fatty acid. So this was the trick of the food industry to make people to buy unsaturated fatty acids because they wanted unsaturated fatty acids, but then no, it's not. It's unsaturated but behaves as saturated, so that was the problem. But the health consequence about that we're going to see a little bit later, probably in the next class. Here, one more example. No, trans fatty acid in the top, cis fatty acid in the bottom. Both of them are monounsaturated, but the trans fatty acid is practically linear, so it behaves itself as a saturated fatty acid. Okay, I hope you got the idea. Do the quiz to make sure that you have the understanding. See you in the next class.